Hello, my name is Matteo Gubellini, and I am the CRO of SoftComply. I am responsible for all the aspects of our product related to compliance to medical device standards and regulation, in particular the document management and anything related to document management in Confluence. And we can provide a comprehensive solution to transform Confluence into a compliant document management system. The solution is comprised of three parts that are all independent. The first, we can provide content. We have a full QMS based on ISO 13485, 6204, 21 CFR 820, and 14971 that covers all the requirements for the vast majority of the main markets in the world, so Europe, North America, and Australia, and New Zealand. Then we have the document management system, which is an app that runs on Confluence and makes Confluence a compliant document management system for 21 CFR 11. And then we have additional apps, such as validation for Confluence Cloud, that help with the compliance of the system to the required standards. But we start with the document management. The document management can be accessed through in several ways, but in particular from the global page. When the app is installed, it creates three spaces in Confluence, and these three spaces are where the control documentation is kept. Anything outside these three spaces is not considered control documentation by the app. If you have existing documents that you want to control, the app can bring them into these three spaces. These spaces are a draft, the released, and the obsolete document spaces, and they are created automatically. In these three spaces, the app is the sole admin and controls very tightly permissions and restriction on all the pages. In the global page, you're first led to a brief introduction of the system, and then when you click the follow button, you access the actual app. We have created an additional interface that helps the user manage the control documentation. We are never going to leave Confluence. We're still in Confluence. All the documentation, all the information are kept in Confluence. We store only certain configuration and field parameters, but we do not touch the content of the pages in your Confluence instance. We just manage the life cycle. The dashboard is where you land when you access the app, and there are two sections. The assigned task, or any task that is assigned to you, is listed here with a hyperlink to this task, and a list of your containers. So these are the activities that you have in progress, or you're working on, or you worked on in the past. And it is a way to keep an eye on things that you were working and you haven't completed, for example, this kappa, or activities or documents that are being approved but are not with you, and you may want to keep an eye to see why they're stuck in that step. On the left side, we have some predefined filter for CAPAs, change request, complaints, and NCs. For people who want to follow closely this type of records, we have a shortcut to the quality system content. Here is where the quality system documentation is kept, meaning procedure, templates, the quality manual, and so forth. As you can see, we have a structure of folders, subfolders, and documents rather than the space, pages, and subpages. It's pretty much mimics the architecture of the documentation and the pages in Confluence, but it is a bit more familiar for people who are not used to the concept of spaces and pages in Confluence. On the top bar, we have a dashboard that guides you back to the dashboard, of course, containers, which is everybody's activities, and folders. So this is where you can browse all the control documentation and only the control documentation. We've seen that there is a shortcut to the quality system documentation, but there are other folders, and you can create and manage folders pretty much like File Explorer. Inside this folder, you may have other subfolder or documents. A document is the whole history of a document. In this case, there is only version 1, which is draft. And in the future, when you have more versions, they will all be listed here with their status. If you click on a document, then yes, it will be brought to Confluence Viewer and Editor, so you can view, edit, and export documents in Confluence as usual. The app does not change this behavior. Now let's give a look at some typical use cases. If I want to create a document, I just click this button. I don't do it in Confluence, so the system can record the existence of this document and can assign the proper metadata. So I can select a type, and this is used for filtering. QMS documents, the system will force you to put them in the QMS folder, and only QMS document can go in the QMS folder. A document that is identified as QMS template is then offered to the user when the user is trying to create a new document, when it is released. There are some templates that we have already created. I'm just going to select one. I can select where I want to say I created this document. I can start a version of whatever value I want. I don't have to start at one. And then the system will do everything itself. It will create a page from that template and will assign the correct location, permissions, and version. So if I browse through my documents, I can find it here. And this is my document. It is important to note that templates for us are not the Confluence templates. Confluence templates are not very well controlled or controllable. So for us, templates are just Confluence pages that are identified as such. So here is a standard Confluence page. I have some content. It has been created from a template. So the system records information on how this was created. And the template already contained the change history table macro. And this change history table macro automatically creates a change history inside the document so that you don't have to do it manually. So it will pull automatically all the information. So here is business as usual. People can collaborate, change the content, add, remove macros, anything else. But at a certain point, I will be happy with the content as an owner, and I want to release it. So there are different ways to release it. The simplest way is that to navigate to the list of versions, click on action and click on route document. In this case, we're creating a container. What are containers? Because we've already seen them before. Containers are objects that are designed to carry documents through their life cycle. So if you want to go from drafted to approved, released, to obsolete, a document has to be attached to a container, and the container carries the document through the different steps. So it is an additional object that you have to manage, but it has advantages. First of all, you can approve as many documents as you want at the same time. As long as they have the same approver, you can add dozens of documents to this container. And when the container is approved, all documents are automatically approved. In addition, the container comes with not just the workflows, but with rules, transitions, conditions, triggers, tasks, and fields that we will see later. So in this case, the system makes an assumption, and it already populates these fields, and it suggests to use the review and approve life cycle, which is the type of workflow that the vast majority of records will follow. But there are other ones that come with the app, and there are more that you can create. So I'm going to stick with this parameter and click on create. So you can see that now this document is already attached to my container. I can add more documents. I can just search for them, and the system will show me only the ones that can be approved and released. So draft the version and that are not already routed within other container. I can also enter my change notes. And this information is automatically added to the change history table, as you can see. Here in the tabs, I have the audit trail that is simply who did what when for the records. This is the workflow that we're going to follow. And then I have tasks. So because it is a review and approve type of workflow, I have a review task in the review step and an approval task in the approval step. There are two types of tasks that you can manage, regular and approval. Regular is a please do this type of task. The output is either it is done or it is not done. The approval type of task instead can have two outcomes, approve and reject. When somebody created this template for this for this container, this was decided back then. And as a user, I can only assign this task, and I can assign it to one or more users as long as I have access to the system. And I can add more if necessary, if I believe it is necessary to add other review or approval task. Otherwise, I can just click launch, and the system will move the container to the first step, which is in review. The first task is now being activated, which is the review task. If I go to my dashboard, it appears here now. And because it is a regular task, I needed to add some information about the completion of the task. Now, this was a very simple task, but say that this is something more complex that comes maybe from a kappa. There can be a lot of information that has to be entered in this field. Once this is done, I just click on complete, confirm, and the task is closed. I was the only assignee. This was the only task that was required in this step, and the system now will automatically move the container to the next step, which is in approval. In the meantime, you can see that the change history macro is already starting to list information related to activities that have been closed. And now the second task, the approval task, is active. There are, of course, two outcomes, approve and reject. I select the appropriate one, the one that I desire, and then I will be required to enter a token. Every user has to install an authenticator if they don't already have one on their phone. We have tested the system with Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator, but in general, any TOTP authenticator should work just fine. So I'm gonna enter my code, and this is something that I set up the first time that I log into the app. It's very simple. It takes about 30 seconds. There is the usual QR code. You scan it, and that's it. And now I've completed, I approved the container, and I approved, by doing that, I approve all the documents that are inside this object. And these documents are now in the typical approved but not released state. And here you can see that the change history table is reflecting the same information. As you can see here, I'm not able to edit this document anymore because it is approved. Although not being released, it's still approved, so I cannot edit it. And here the system is holding this document in the draft space before releasing them because you're waiting for something. It could be training, it could be something else that has to happen, test, regulatory approval. For whatever reason, until the moment that I decide that I'm happy enough, I click on release, and all the documents that are inside this container are automatically released. The system automatically moves this document from the draft space to the released space and updates its status accordingly. So you will see now that the system says that the document version 4 is released. Again, read-only, so people can access the document and consult the document and do what they have to do with this document until the moment that I decide that I want to do something with it. We've seen that you can go from the app to the page in Confluence, but also from the page you can go back to the document object in the app. So here I can see my version 4 released, and if I want to create a new version, I don't do anything in Confluence. I just do it from here. I just click on create a version. The system will automatically make a copy of this object, assign the correct version, put it in the correct space, assign the correct permission, and so forth. And then the process pretty much restarts. You have your document, you make a modification, then you decide to release it, and so forth. So what happens if I keep on releasing new documents, new version of the same document? The system automatically manages the obsolescence of the previous version. So this is a worked out example. I have my first document version, which started at version 2. It was approved, then released. Then I created version 3, which was approved and then released. The moment version 3 released, version 2 is marked as obsolete and moved to the obsolete space. Then I created version 4, approved, obsolete, approved, released. Version 3 was obsolete, and so forth. So you can have one version in draft, one version approved waiting to be released, an official version, which is the release one, and everything else is made obsolete by the system. And the obsolete is another space that is tightly controlled, and not everybody, of course, has access to the obsolete versions of document. So in brief, this is an overview of the typical use scenario for this app. Now, we're going to spend a little bit of time, very brief time, giving a look at the advanced features. The app is compliant out of the box, meaning that when you install it, it does already have workflows, it does already permission defined so that you can start managing documentation in a compliant manner. But you can create and modify the app in a way to suit your processes. First of all, you can create user or role profiles, according to your need. So if you don't want everybody to see CAPAs or complaints or have people have access only to a certain type of document, you can do it from here. If the workflows that we have created are not suitable for your process, you can create your own. They were very simple workflow like the one we just followed, and there are more complex workflows like the CAPA workflows. But you can create as many as you want. This is just an example. For us, workflows are just boxes with arcs, with transition, and they don't have a lot of intelligence because the intelligence is then put somewhere else. Fields. Confluence does not have fields, and it's something that we felt that was missing from the offering. So what we did is that to create the same structure of field as Jira. So you can create fields of different types, and instead of assigning them to issue or issue types, you assign them to the so-called container templates. What is the container template? So this is the blueprint of the life cycle of a document. It contains all the information like the workflow, the rules, the transition, the triggers, and the fields, so that the document can be processed in the correct way. We have seen this review and approve template. It contained only one field. We haven't even given a look at it because there was nothing special here. For each step of the workflow, the user, you can decide whether you can create additional tasks, whether signatures are required to complete this task, whether this is an approval step or not, or whether you can change the document or the change notice in step. And you have your predefined task. And this is what the user gets automatically when they create an instance of this blueprint. There are other templates, of course, that are more complex, like the CAPA template, which have a very complex workflow, and each workflow has its own set of rules, settings, and tasks. But it also has a lot of fields. So when you associate a field, when you use a field in one template, you can add rules to this field, like Jira. When is this field editable? When is this field required, if ever required? And this adds a lot of intelligence into the workflow, because like in Jira, you can decide that if this field is not filled in, the system will not proceed through the workflow. The container cannot move through the workflow. So what is the advantage of that other than having additional fields? Let's give a look at an actually CAPA that was created from this object. This is what it looks like when I create a CAPA from this CAPA template. And at all effects, this is a form. So I have fields that are required. You can see them here. Fields that are not required but are editable. Fields that are not editable because it doesn't make sense to say that the CAPA is effective when I haven't even launched. And this is based on a rule that you can define. And this, consider that if you put the correct field and you set it up in the correct way, this is something that can replace a document. This is your CAPA. This could be the CAPA with all the information that are needed, and you don't need a Confluence page to go with it, or you can have a hybrid situation. This is just to show you how far you can push the system. You don't need necessarily to use CAPA forms. If you don't want to, you can just use a Confluence page. So this kind of concludes a very high-level overview of the document management system. And if you have any question, you can revert to us. Thanks for listening.